Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Greetings of peace. I want to welcome everyone to today's webinar, which focuses on how to best support Muslim students during the spiritual season that's coming up soon, which is the month of Ramadan. And that starts on April 13th this year. And as we enter the second year of Ramadan since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic and all of the changes it's brought into our daily lives, we'll be speaking with 4 Muslim high school and university students to get some of their perspectives. This webinar is an extension of our INGYouth program, which builds the capacity of Muslim teenagers and young adults to provide education about Muslims and their faith and related topics to middle and high schools, as well as colleges and community groups and others. And our webinar includes an exciting array of guests, as you can see here, who are graduates of the INGYouth program. And they include Humza, an 11th grade student in California, Raza, an 11th grade student also in California, Soha, who is a first-year college student in California, and Omar, a third-year college student in Illinois. And for our audience's information, we will be following this panel by sharing 2 handouts, one for Muslim parents and one for educators, that basically will be that are downloadable from a page that will be linked in the comments section. And we encourage you to look at them, which are full of information as well as resources to assist you in this time. There will be a portion of the webinar where we'll be taking questions, and we are both on Zoom and on Facebook Live. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to go ahead and ask them in the Q&A section or in the comments on Facebook. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to all of you. Thanks so much for joining today. I want to start by just getting a sense of how everything's going, what your current school situation is like. And so we'll go ahead and start with you, Soha. How would you say you're doing, and how is your family during this time?
Alhamdulillah, I feel like we're doing pretty well. So my home situation right now is that everybody's living at home. So my dad does not go to work anymore outside the house. All of his work is remote from home. And both of my sisters are doing middle school from home, and then I'm doing college from home. So at first there was like an adjustment period of like getting everybody the space that they needed to kind of do their online classes and everything. But right now we're doing pretty well, thankfully. And I think we've all sort of gotten used to the whole remote learning and remote work and everything.
Yeah, I mean, especially given that, Ramadan, when Ramadan started last year, it was pretty much the very beginning of the pandemic. And so now at this point, we've gotten fairly used to it. Raza, how would you say you're doing? How's your family?
Yeah, I'm also doing really, really well. Yeah, my family is also very good. We're all at home right now. My dad's working from home, but my brother and I are going to school half the time. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the start of Ramadan.
Cool. What about you, Humza?
Yeah, same with Raza. I think we're doing pretty well. My dad has been able to get back into his office in the past few weeks, which is exciting. Raza and I have started returning to school, like he said. Over the past few months, we've spent a lot of time with my grandparents who were visiting from Pakistan, and they just left a few weeks ago. But I think all of us are just looking forward to the vaccine becoming available to the wider population so things can start getting back to normal.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Omar, how's everything going with you? Where are you now?
I'm actually in San Jose, California.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's been wonderful. My family's, I think having this pandemic for so long has like brought up like mature habits. So like everyone has their own hobbies now. My grandpa does gardening. My brother plays ping pong. I try to go for walks. So it's pretty nice. Everyone's at home.
Yeah.
All season work.
That's great.
And
Yeah. What did you say?
Everything's been at home.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And then Omar, what is your school schedule now? I know you go to school in Illinois and you initially started there on campus, but how is it now?
So I think college is actually pretty okay, mostly because generally speaking, college students have flexible schedules. We get to decide when we want our schedule, so I can always make it like, so it's not like during Jummah time. But also because like now that it's online, a lot of times you don't have to go to lectures. The participation isn't counted, right? So I can just watch my lectures whenever I want to watch them, and run the schedule in my own way. So
Gotcha.
last Ramadan, it wasn't too bad. I don't expect this Ramadan,
Yeah.
that particular activity is going to be that.
So you're fully remote and you're fully at home. There's no like in-person college going on for you?
Nope.
Gotcha. What about you, Soha? How's your college? And this is your first year, so I'm sure it's been quite interesting transitioning to university during the pandemic.
Yeah, so last year for Ramadan, we were at home too, but I was still in high school, and then at that point, like second semester senior year, there was just nothing happening. Like my teachers just it was like they quit. Honestly, nobody was barely an email from them. So I was chilling. I barely did school last Ramadan. It was mostly just chilling at home, which is definitely not how it's gonna be this year for me, because now I'm in my second semester of college. And unlike Omar, for some reason, all my professors are like, show up to live Zoom lecture and like answer these polls so we know you're here. So it's more intensive. They like for some reason want to know that we're there. Same thing for my discussions. But like again, it's build your own schedule. And I'm taking quite a lot of units, which is my own fault. Like I didn't have to take that many courses. But yeah, everything's completely remote with my college. I go to UC Berkeley. And everything is remote. I've been up to visit campus like once, and I think I'm going up to visit next week. But like in general, I've just been at home. And yeah, I mean, I also have a job now. So
Okay.
I'm more concerned about balancing my job and like fasting more so than school, because school's at
Yeah.
home, and I could still like email my professors and get a little bit leeway for certain things. But with my job, it's like show up when you're scheduled.
Yeah.
So we'll see
Yeah.
what happens.
That's interesting. And where are you working?
I'm a barista at Starbucks.
Reset Starbucks. Yeah, we're hosting a webinar tomorrow, and it's on essential workers and the things that employees can keep in mind and employers can keep in mind when kind of working while fasting. So you may want to tune in to that and get some
Maybe.
tips. So that might be cool. And then Humza, what about you? What's your school schedule now?
So I don't really have as much flexibility as Soha or Omar, in that, you know, I'm still in high school, so I have to show up to my classes right on time, and especially now that my school's back in person a little bit, I had to wake up like an hour earlier than I was used to this morning, and even that was a challenge in itself. But you know, I got my license recently, so Raza and I are driving to school together. But on the days when I'm still at home, I think Zoom is still really tiring for me, and I think for all of us. But I'm hoping for a relatively normal senior year. And I think just over the past year, just seeing my friends today reminded me how hard it's been to maintain my connection with them over the past year, because I just, you know, I haven't seen some people in over a year, almost a year and a few months.
Yeah. And then what's the Raza, what's the situation like at school? You mentioned before the call, you mentioned that you got a full day of school today. What is that like? Do you wear masks, or how does
Yeah.
distancing work?
Yeah, so I just started going in for the full day of school, and basically in the morning we show up, we get our temperature checked, and we also have to get tested the week before. So every week we get tested, we have to send that to the nurse. And so we take our temperature, and then all of our classes are social distance, masks on, and all of the fans are blowing and windows open. And since it's in San Mateo, it can get pretty cold in these classrooms. So I definitely bundled up this morning. But yeah, and then lunch was interesting. It was all these prepackaged meals, and we sit in little hula hoops 6 feet apart and eat our lunches. So
Oh, wow.
it's a big change, but it's nice to be able to finally have a meal with a lot of my friends that I haven't seen in a while. So
Yeah, that's cool. So do you welcome the change? Do you both like the idea of kind of being in person at least a few days a week?
yeah, I really like it personally, because I'm taking 2 lab classes. So in the morning and afternoon, I get to go into the lab, and it's very good to have that option, so I can, you know, work hands-on, and it's a lot easier to work in the lab than at home with kids. So
What about you, Humza?
Yeah, I would echo that. My in-person class is physics, and last semester it was mostly remote, except towards the end. So they sent me a kit that I would use at home, and my desk was just super messy all the time, just parts and things I had to tinker with all over the place. So now that I'm in the classroom, it's a lot easier because I can just leave all of that stuff at school. But
Yeah.
Just going in today, it was freezing. They have all the windows open, the fans are blasting, air filtration. It was very cold.
Hopefully they figure that out. I mean, it's gonna get hotter. I mean, we're kind of in early spring, so it gets hotter. It might be nicer, but we'll see. Okay, so yeah, I mean, thanks so much to all of you, kind of for sharing a little bit of that intro with school and with the the impacts of school that you've had so far. This webinar is really focused on Ramadan. Ramadan is coming up in a few weeks, less than 2 weeks now, actually in 2 weeks. And so I wanted to start by just presenting a brief amount of information about Ramadan for our audiences, for those who are unfamiliar. And then we'll go into a little bit more about how some of this stuff has been affecting you all at school. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a program. It's the INGYouth program, and it basically prepares students to be able to discuss information about Muslims, Islam, their identity, and so on. And this is one of our presentations from the youth program. And so I figured I might as well just use this to talk a little bit about Ramadan. And so the first thing is kind of recognizing what is Ramadan. And it's basically an entire month that's in the Muslim calendar, and it's incredibly holy for Muslims. The significance of the month is it's believed to be the month in which the Quran, which is the major holy book for Muslims, was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the 7th century. And it's a month that's characterized by worship and in particular fasting. And we can go into a little bit more about what fasting looks like. It's also a month of community where Muslims are constantly gathering with one another and meeting, whether at the mosque or house of worship or at each other's houses for dinner or things like that. As you can see in this photo here, this is a mosque in Morocco, Al-Qarawiyyin Mosque, which is both a mosque and one of the oldest universities in the world. And you can see tons of worshipers here at the time, at night. So the Ramadan is based on the Muslim calendar. It's the 9th month in the Muslim calendar, and the Muslim calendar is lunar, which means that it's based on the moon, which means it does not necessarily align with the solar or Gregorian calendar. As a result, if you believe that the Gregorian calendar is stationary, the lunar, Islamic calendar basically adjusts. Is a few days off that calendar, and so it moves back 11 days earlier. And so this year, Ramadan is actually going to be in 2 weeks, April 13th until May 12th. Last year, Ramadan was 11 days later. So it was in, late April and ended in late May. And it's going to continually go back until in about 30 years, we'll come back to this springtime. So, I mean, kind of key to this is that Ramadan is slowly moving more and more into this, like the meat of the school year. When we talk about fasting, it's known as one of the 4th pillars of Islam. In Islam, there's generally 5 pillars, and it's called Sawm in Arabic. And fasting really entails not eating or drinking during the sunlight hours. And so, and I'll go into what that looks like for Muslims in their day. And the goals of fasting are a few things, which are drawing closer to God, first and foremost. Generally getting a sense of increasing one's willpower. If one is denying themselves food or drink throughout the day, then it takes a lot of kind of strength and internal motivation to be able to do that. And so that's really brought out. It's about feeling compassion for others, especially those who don't have food. We live in a time where homelessness and hunger are prevalent, and so it's a time when Muslims who are in more privileged positions can empathize with what that might feel like. It's a time to reflect on shortcomings. where one is kind of more conscious of their behavior while fasting and then thinking through how can they, manage some of these challenges, as well as strengthening relations. I mentioned it's a time of community. People are constantly visiting one another, constantly going to mosques and so on. And it's an amazing time to really reconnect with family, with friends and things. And so a typical day in Ramadan looks something like this. Families will wake up before dawn and eat like a small breakfast. One question I'll actually ask you all now. What do you normally eat in the morning if you wake up? We'll start with you, Humza.
Usually we have like a really big packet of shami kebabs in the fridge that are already cooked, so we can just heat them up really quickly. So I try to have as many of those as possible, sometimes in a paratha roll.
Can you explain to our audiences what a shami kebab and paratha roll is?
Sure. So let's see. A shami kebab it's usually made out of beef. Sometimes it can be made out of chicken too, and it's basically just kind of not ground beef, but kind of packed beef that's in a small circle, and it's pretty easy to mush up. So you can put it on paratha, which is basically like a super flat piece of bread that you can toast, or you can also fry it. And then roll it up, kind of almost like a burrito, is what I would say.
Yeah. So you're someone like Humza. You're eating, real food during this time. By real, I mean like a dinner-like food. What about you, Soha?
Well, my past Ramadans have been pretty different than probably what my Ramadans are going to look like now. But I was an athlete for not last year, but like 3 Ramadans before that. And I didn't like go easy on myself during Ramadan. I would tell my coach and he was like, okay, like don't pass out. And I would just be playing tennis all through the month. And even before that, I remember Ramadan where my mom accidentally signed me up for tennis lessons and swim lessons in the same day. And she was like, oops, I already paid for it. And I was like, okay, I'll do it, I guess. So I would swim in the morning, play tennis in the evening, and then go home and break my fast. But I really enjoyed it. I don't know. I think it made me stronger.
Yeah.
I do try to eat full meals, but again, like my appetite was really weird too. So normally like before dawn, I wake up. Even now, I try to get like a huge glass and I just make a smoothie, and it's
Gotcha. Yeah.
full of all these nutrients because I can't like eat. Like it's just too much like in the morning. So I would down like a smoothie and then usually have like 4 dates or so, which are just really nutritious and they also keep you hydrated.
Yeah.
And then in the evening,
we'll get there. But for now, let's
we'll
focus on the morning.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. What about you, Omar?
Yeah, so I think normally, like at home, I would have a regiment much like Humza's. Like we would eat just whatever we had for like breaking fast the night before. We just carry on in the morning, so it'd be a full meal. In college, it's a bit different. You don't really like. I used to eat at a dorm room, so nothing was open at 4 a.m. So I kind of like prepare a lot of really quick, easy meals, mac and cheese. I get a bunch of protein shakes that I would drink in the morning and then kind of work. The good thing is you always have somebody to have suhoor with because it's like, it's college, right? Everyone's awake at 3 a.m. doing assignments anyways.
Yeah.
So it's actually not that bad from that perspective. You just need to like plan out something quick and easy to make it for yourself for school.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Raza, do you also eat shami kebabs and paratha?
I feel like I eat less shami kebabs and paratha than Humza does. I prefer the more breakfasty route. I would have yogurt with some granola and honey, maybe some fruit in there just for some extra nutrients. So,
yeah, great. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, you can, our audiences really see that ultimately Muslims are trying to eat something in the morning, and that's going to vary. It's going to be something like dinner. It may also be something more breakfasty, or something like really quick and easy, like a smoothie, or all of the above if you're really hungry in the morning. And then, after that, people are really continuing with their normal schedule. going about their days in whatever way. And our panelists here will discuss a little bit more of what that looks like for them. And then they'll break fast, whether at sunset, they'll break fast around sunset, which is, in April is going to be around 8 p.m. And that will enable them to eat. And it's common to eat with family. And as I mentioned, it's a month of community. And so it's common to eat with friends, in which case people are constantly, breaking bread with one another. Some people then opt in to going to the mosque or basically performing extra prayers at night. And last year, these were canceled for the most part. So people were able to do it at home or kind of have those prayers be live streamed. And so that is really what a typical day would look like. And just to kind of follow up on the question I asked earlier, what would you all say are things that you usually eat for dinner, really briefly? We'll start with you, Raza.
Yeah, again, I think just whatever is at home. Sometimes my parents will order in, they'll bring food home. There's this really good Pakistani restaurant near our house called Zareen's, which we get a lot of food from, especially during Ramadan. And yeah, and also in the past, we've also had, before COVID, we've also had people over and we've gone to people's houses to break fast. So.
Great. Yeah, that sounds really good. Zareen's is really an amazing restaurant. I think we can all second that as we're all in the area. What about you, Soha? What do you eat?
So normally I really love rice. I am like a big rice person, but in Ramadan, having that much carbs is difficult because you eat like 3 bites and then you're full, but there's like no sustenance in that. So during Ramadan, I try to switch to like more naan and like have naan with my meat instead of rice, because even though naan is still like a carb, it fills you up a little bit slower, at least in my experience. And then I also try to have another smoothie in the evening, so I know that I'm like getting all the hydration that I should need.
Yeah, that's great. Humza?
Yeah, I mean, same as Raza. Zareen's is a favorite for my family, but I just personally I try to eat as much meat as possible, just because I know that that's what's going to keep me going and that's what's going to stay in my stomach the best. And then even outside of Ramadan, I always try to have another mini meal or snack before I go to bed. So that's the same during Ramadan, whether it's a bowl of yogurt or even maybe another prata roll or a few more shami kebabs.
Yeah, awesome. And Omar, what about you?
I had Zareen's last week. It was amazing. Their chicken wraps are excellent. For college life, usually it's you just get dinner, right? Sometimes it's nice to like take some friends and then like even non-Muslim friends and then just like go to a restaurant and get dinner there. Remember one time we went to like get some burgers and then afterwards I had to go bring Maghrib and like brought like 7 of my friends just waiting in the masjid lobby while I played Maghrib and left. So yeah, it's fun. Yeah, definitely eat something hearty like a burger or like some chicken to get yourself going for the night.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I hope for our audiences this really kind of paints like a greater picture of what it's like, especially when, if you have these Muslim students, getting a sense of what their mornings are like and what their evenings are like, it might help a little bit as you kind of understand what life is like during Ramadan. And so we want to now transition over to get some more of your experiences during Ramadan and especially how that interacts with school. So the question I have for you, and we'll start with you, Humza, what are some challenges that you experience as a student, especially when fasting during Ramadan?
Yeah, I think as a student, especially if I'm at school, it's harder to do things that I normally do with my friends, like play basketball or football during lunch, just because you get so hungry and then it's super hard to focus on school. And then my commute in non-COVID times also requires a good amount of movement and walking. I take the Caltrain to school and then I walk from the Caltrain station to school. And sometimes I bike from my house to the Caltrain station in the morning. So that kind of becomes another tough part of the day, especially when it's really hot.
That's great. And what about you, Raza?
Yeah, I think same as Humza. We had the same commute, walking to the Caltrain, taking that home. but then also sort of watching friends eat and drink at lunch, definitely a challenge. And then also sometimes people ask like, why aren't you eating? And also, like Soha mentioned, it's definitely tough to keep up with sports. I don't think I've ever been as or done anything as intense as what Soha was doing with the swimming and tennis, but I've definitely tried to, play squash right before breaking my fast, and that's what my dad has done as well. So
What are some of the challenges that you have?
Yeah, so I already kind of mentioned my athlete days. I'm not an athlete anymore, so I don't think that'll be an issue. Tennis captainship was just in high school. But now I think like another issue is again like making sure I stay completely nourished throughout the month because my appetite is like kind of small. Um, so when I like go to break my fast and have dinner, I'll have like 3 bites and then say, "Oh, okay, I'm done." But like my mom always reminds me, and then when I move to college, I'm not gonna have her to remind me, but my plan is like probably to eat a little bit, wait like a good 45 minutes, and then eat like another meal, and then just not snack all night so that I can eat well in the morning. But that is my main struggle is like keeping up with what I eat and like making sure I stay hydrated and
Yeah.
well nutritioned.
Yeah. What about you, Omar?
I think my main problem is just making sure that I don't have like big tests while I'm fasting. I think last year it was like during midterm season for us. This year it's going to be during final season. I always try to like ask the professor if there is like alternate times to take tests, which there usually is because we have like, especially in COVID times, we have students who are taking the class from like China or India. They're on a different time zone, and so there's usually like a 3 a.m. slot or something, which works better for me because I'm not going to be fasting at 3 a.m. So that's usually my main challenge. Working with, I think for me, like I enjoy living vicariously through people's eating, so that's not as much of a challenge for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean I think testing is a really interesting one, and especially over the last few years, it's either been during finals or AP tests or things like that. And so, Raza or Hamza, what have been some things for you all with testing, and how have you been able to manage that?
yeah, I think in the past, I haven't really taken any like big exams while fasting because it was like in middle school and like the first year of high school. So it wasn't too big of a deal. But then last year, especially because of COVID, like Omar mentioned, it was easy to save them and do the tests after I break my fast because a lot of them were take home, or I was able to sort of start them after sundown. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think take-home tests are nice where you can kind of manage when you're going to take them. It sounds like almost your schedule is similar to that. What about you, Hamza? Is it the same?
Yeah, I think it's the same. Just having flexibility is super helpful, especially when it comes to tests, because those are just require an intense period of focus and concentration, sometimes for hours at a time. And when you're fasting, that's just really hard to do. So when I have had to take even minor quizzes, I usually try to ask if I can take them home, or like Raza said, just take them after I break my fast.
Yeah. Soha, how are tests for you?
So I took all of like my major exams while fasting. Like I don't think there was any AP exam or maybe one SAT, but like not my important SAT. That was like my practice run. But like all my big exams were taken while fasting. Um, I don't know. I found ways to make it work for me, I think. Um, I never like asked for accommodations though. Like I remember junior year of high school, my AP physics exam was an afternoon exam. And for afternoon exams, you're expected to come to school for the morning and then do the exam later. But then I told my mom, like, I was like, I just want to stay home. Um, so then she let me like skip the first half of school so I could just go take that like 3 hour test and then go home.
Yeah.
But in general, I just kind of would power through it. I don't think like personally the food like not eating wasn't a big deal when it came to the test. It was just I'd feel really fatigued after. So I just reward myself with a nap. And I don't know if college exams are going to feel any different. I know that like, I think one of my finals is like the day before Eid this year because Berkeley's schedule just fell that way. But I'm not like too concerned about it because I'm gonna be sitting in this spot on my seat at home taking it. So or like my bed's right there. I'm gonna roll out of bed, take the exam, roll
Yeah.
back into bed, and then break my fast.
Gotcha.
So inshallah it will be fine.
Yeah. So when thinking through, you know, you mentioned that ultimately, like, you haven't needed to ask for accommodations during class. I'm wondering, like, have there been situations where you have, and in those situations, like, what are pieces of advice that other students could take when approaching their teachers with, you know, information on how to let them know that they're fasting and what accommodations they might seek and things like that?
So usually I haven't had to seek accommodations for Ramadan specifically, but there are a ton of times where I've had to like step out of class to pray, or whatever it may be. Like I have had religious accommodations before. Something I normally do is I'll just send an email and I'll be like, hey, Mr., Mrs., whatever, blank. And then I'll just talk about the month of Ramadan has started, or I'm in the middle of the month of Ramadan, and I'll be fasting from sunup to sundown every day, no food or water. And then, like in parentheses, probably put a link to like some resources. Normally, the ING resources are just a good way to go. Very quick and easy. It's all there. I just copy that link, put it in there. Like, if you want to read more, here is what's happening. Basically, like I need this accommodation. I need to like take this test later. I need to, I don't know, like get an extension on this assignment. I would ask for extensions quite a bit actually for homework, because homework would be due like kind of later in the day, and I'd say, hey, like I couldn't do it. My head is hurting really bad from dehydration today from this fast. It's just particularly bad, or like whatever it may be. Or like for my tennis coach, I would always just go up to him and be like, hey, like my head hurts. Like, but I would always tell him at the beginning of the month, this is what's happening for the rest of the month. So like, you can't run me as hard. You can't like make me practice as hard. So just being like, just offering up all the information so that they don't feel the need to like, kind of question you back and forth as much. Just say like, it's all here. Like you can read about it. I can answer any questions. I've never had anybody say that they need to talk to my parents, but I'm sure that could also be something that comes up, in which case you just let them know.
Yeah.
But usually I found that teachers can be pretty understanding.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's really important to have supportive teachers that are gonna kind of look out for you. Hamza, what would you say are some things you can do to notify your teachers that you're fasting and may require some accommodations?
Yeah, I think personally, it's a lot easier for me to have these types of conversations face to face, whether it's in person or over Zoom. But I think no matter how I end up reaching out to my teachers, I know that what's more important is that I do reach out to them and give them that heads up before the month starts, because I never know what might come up during Ramadan. Like Soha just said, there could be bad days. You could be really tired one day. And I think, especially this year, when Zoom is so tiring, even just letting them know that my energy levels might be a bit down during class, or that I might be a bit quieter than usual, is usually very helpful to them, and they're always super understanding about that. And I've never had an issue about it.
Yeah.
And I think, now I'm in high school, so I don't take PE class anymore. But if I did have a physical education class, I would definitely make sure, especially in that class, to give the teacher a heads up, and probably asked to be excused from some of the more intense, maybe workouts or runs or things like that.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that would be really important. Omar, do you have anything to add?
Not really. I think most people have mentioned all the methods. It's harder, I think, to get face-to-face interactions with professors nowadays. So like,
Oh, Omar, you are
working on like quick drafts of email professors at once. That's the only tip I would probably say. Have like a certain template for what you want to do, so you can set it up quickly.
Yeah. What about you, Raza?
Yeah, same as everyone mentioned. I think those are all really great tips. Definitely asking for extensions or extra time on tests or projects. are helpful. Maybe like Soha mentioned, pushing them back to like later in the night or maybe the following morning so you have the night to work on them would definitely be helpful.
Yeah, I think that those are all really key. I mean, ultimately, it's really important just at least notify your teacher. I think communication is key, and so notifying your teachers and then asking them, I'm feeling tired. Like articulating your needs, I think, is a skill. It's not something that comes naturally to most people. So kind of working to develop that would be really important, and enabling your teacher to kind of be able to respond to that. I do want to just mention for those who are watching, you can feel free to post your questions either on the comments on Facebook or in the Q&A on Zoom if you have any questions for our panelists. Another question I have for you all is and we'll start with you, Raza, is there a special role that parents can have? What can parents do to help their students and, maybe communicate with the school?
Yeah, I think parents can definitely help you reach out to your teachers. I feel like if a teacher maybe you think they won't be as accepting, parents can always help with that. And then also they can also just help you stay on top of your assignments, and with your teacher they can help you plan out when your assignments are due and when you're taking your tests, just so you have a good balance between fasting and then work, and you're able to do both at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think, Omar?
Just to take the college perspective again, I guess like it's kind of a system of like weaning yourself off your parents, because parents are a great support in high school and are really helpful for like getting you to like everything from waking up for like pleasure to like drink your milk and have a good support to like, I don't know, making you motivated throughout the day. So you kind of need to like prepare yourself to not have your parents in college and kind of have like an alarm system set up, rely on friends, that kind of thing, because parents are such a great support system when you're at home.
Gotcha. Okay. Great. And then the last question I have for this section, and unless Humza or Soha, do you have anything to add? Yeah, I figured. So we'll go to the next question, which is, Soha, if you want to present about Ramadan, how might you approach your teacher, and then what are the resources that a student would have available?
So again, like the INGYouth resources are really good. I'm very familiar with them because I've been with ING, or I've worked with ING for so long. So those was like probably what I would use. I don't think I've ever like formally presented about Ramadan. But again, like sometimes we'll be talking about it in class and then I'll just raise my hand and start talking. But it's like good to be familiar with all of the presentations and stuff that ING has, or if you can even find your own sort of resources, just in case. And again, to approach your teacher, you could just same opening, hey, like this month is coming up, I'm going to be fasting every day. And a lot of people don't seem to be familiar with what is happening. So would you be okay if I gave like a 5-10 minute presentation on Ramadan to help educate? And I think most teachers would be pretty open to that. I can't imagine like why they would say no. But yeah.
Anyone else want to add of other kind of other techniques that you would use?
Yeah, I can add something here. I think it's definitely important to let the teacher know why it's important to you and what the benefit would be for the class. Like I'll give a personal example. When Raza and I approached one of the history teachers at our school to create a Muslim Student Alliance Club, what we said was basically that, look, we just want to spread our voice and help other people learn about Islam, and your goal might be the same or different, but I think making that clear to your teacher is super important, and maybe even emphasizing it as a learning experience for your classmates. And then of course, in the presentation itself, just being prepared to answer questions or even lead a discussion about whatever you're presenting about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that, those are both really great pieces of advice. Omar or Raza, did you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think also just talking about how fasting can affect your education again, like we mentioned before, it's also just letting your teacher know that, and maybe also your class, that you might not be able to participate as much. And then also how your teachers and your peers can support you while you're fasting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think these are all, key things. Some of those resources that Soha was mentioning, I presented from one earlier. We have a series of FAQs I'll actually go through at the end of this call. A lot of resources that both teachers and students can use to talk about Muslims or Islam in their schools, and especially Ramadan. So we're now going to move on to our Q&A from the audience, and we have a few questions, and I'm going to start with the first one, which is a presentation about prayer time during school hours, especially younger ages like middle school. And so, what can one of you speak to the idea of praying in school, and when does praying in school usually happen, especially, and does that change throughout the year? Soha, why don't you go ahead and start with that question?
Yeah, so I'm 18 now, but I've been praying at school since I was about 11, in middle school and high school. So I'm very familiar with like the whole process of letting teachers know and like asking for that space. So when I first started, I remember I would just pray outside like during lunchtime, with like my best friends that are still my best friends now. Like they would watch me to like make sure that like nothing happened. I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but it was nice to just have them around. And they still to this day, if I have to pray in public, they will stand around me. So that's great. But when I started like realizing I could ask for a classroom, I remember I went to like two of the teachers that I trusted the most. And I just said like, hey, I have to pray around this time at lunch. Is it okay if I use your classroom? And I think the way that the middle school schedule was set up, like the prayer times changed throughout the year, but they didn't change so badly that it was never not in lunchtime. So that was sort of how I navigated it in middle school, but it was very much like me being proactive about it. Like I had to go to the teacher myself and ask for that space. Um, I never like asked my parents to. Actually, my parents told me to do it myself. So that was just sort of how I navigated it in middle school. And I know that my younger sister right now, who is in 8th grade, when she was in person school, she had also begun asking her teachers about that. So I think the biggest thing was just feeling safe enough in a classroom to ask that question,
Yeah.
and sort of have that. And then in high school, like a similar sort of thing happened, but I heavily relied on my tennis coach for a place to pray. So he was also an econ teacher. So at lunch I would like go pray in the back of his classroom. And that was really nice. And we also had a tennis classroom. So there came a point where one of the prayers, the noon prayer, I would do at lunch. And then there's like a prayer in midday sort of that started happening in the middle of 3-hour tennis practices. So then I would run out of practice, go into the tennis classroom and have to pray as well. So I think the prayer that normally falls into school time is the noon or like afternoonish prayer. And then if your students are doing like extracurriculars and they're at school for a long time, then they might also have to pray the midday prayer, especially in winter when the days get shorter. But I think if you know that you have Muslim students, it might be a good idea to maybe reach out to them, or if you see them kind of like approaching you about it, just to be open and to kind of work with them in terms of the timing and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I was very lucky that I had teachers who supported me through the whole process, and now I'm comfortable praying anywhere and asking anybody to pray anywhere. But it takes time to get there too.
Yeah, I think, hearing your story, it's nice because that was 6th grade, right? And so a young 6th grade student who's like 10 or 11, it's quite daunting to be able to ask your teacher and things like that for this type of accommodation. But, really a lot of gratitude to the adults in your life at the time who really supported that effort and nurtured that. Do any of you, Humza, Omar, Raza, do you have anything to add to this type of question?
I would say it also extends to Zoom. If you can just, again, giving your teachers a heads up ahead of time that you might need to step out for a bit is helpful. And then also I usually just send them a message during class just to let them know, hey, I'm going to be leaving now, and then I'll be back soon.
Great. Yeah, we're getting tons of great questions. So I'm gonna shift gears to Facebook, where we have a question, which is, what food or drink do you miss the most when you're fasting? You're all on mute.
I have an answer.
Let's hear
This
it.
is so bad. I really like coffee, and for like the past 3 Ramadans, I've been really like I have to wean off of it during the month because it just doesn't make sense at the times that we can't eat or drink to have coffee. But like the first week or so is always really rough because I get like these terrible headaches and I just really want a sip.
Gotcha.
But it's good to wean off.
Yeah.
Like I
Sure.
should.
Yeah.
But that's what I miss the most.
What about you, Omar?
I think water is always the hardest. You never realize it until you're not drinking water for a day, and then you're like, I'm really, really thirsty. Especially those days where you like forget to drink enough in suhoor or something. Those are always the worst.
Mhm.
Yeah. So everything else I think is manageable, but water sucks.
Yeah. Raza?
Yeah, I agree with Omar. Definitely water. Like I feel like the hunger sometimes is it's tough, but it's definitely less tough than the water. So
Yeah. Raza?
Yes, especially during Zoom school or COVID times, I keep a water bottle on my desk at all times, and I'm just constantly sipping from it during class. So that's just a huge challenge for me.
Yeah. That's great. I don't know what I miss the most. I miss dessert. I like sugar, so I always want to eat some sort of sugar during the day. I think we got a couple of questions on Zoom. A lot of questions everywhere, first of all. So that's great. And thank you to all who have asked questions. Now, this question is on younger students. And is prayer and fasting, is that something that younger children are expected to do? Especially when we're talking about elementary school, K through 5. And so we'll start with that question. Omar, what would you say?
I think in terms of like expectation, if we're looking from a religious standpoint, I think ask a scholar, like probably not ask a bunch about. But in terms of like feasibility, I think I can speak to that. I think it's like I started praying and fasting at school when I was around middle school, and I think it was fine. Most teachers were completely willing to allow me to pray in their classrooms. Most teachers were also completely willing to like acknowledge the fact that I was fasting and go easier on me as a middle schooler. So I think it's completely feasible for middle schoolers to do. And even if you're a little shy, if you can't ask a teacher, you can go to the quiet corner that you can find on campus and go pray there, and you'll also be fine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would generally say that elementary, it really depends on the family and the individual that's deciding as to when they're going to start, engaging in some of these practices. A general rule would be a general understanding would be to say that elementary schools would not be fasting. However, again, maybe if they're in 4th or 5th grade, they might start, depending again on the family and the circumstances. And so just kind of understanding that you have these general ideas, and then those can vary with each individual in person. Another question, kind of part 2 to that, was is there a respectful way to ask a family what they might need during Ramadan, or ask a student what they might need? Humza, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily one right answer to that. I think just approaching them and keeping an open mind and just asking them maybe like, what do you need from me during this time? How can I best support you? Is there anything I can do? Leaving it open-ended and just letting them tell you whatever their needs are would definitely be what I would say for that.
Awesome. Another 2 questions were really on your environment. What would you say are when you talk about fasting during school, are you, and both Soha and Omar speak to this in high school and in college now, are you among few students that are doing this? Are there other students at your school that are also fasting and participating in Ramadan and prayer, or are you kind of, alone in that way? We'll start with you, Omar.
Yeah, I think in college, definitely not alone. There's an MSA. A lot of people fast. We have like an MSA wide iftar that we all go to, and someone orders food and we all pay for it. It's awesome. I think in high school also, probably not alone. I remember there were like 4 or 5 Muslim kids in my high school. I think all of us fasted. And I think on Fridays we would actually have like a Friday gang get together and go for prayers together in one of our cars. So yeah, I think most of the time you can find at least one buddy, if not more, to hang out and do stuff with you.
Sure. And you mentioned something. You said MSA. Can you elaborate more on what that is for our audiences?
Yeah, for sure. So the MSA is just, I think, one way, like one type of Muslim organization that we have. It's called the Muslim Students Association. There is many of those across campuses. It's like a Muslim affinity group, and I think that's the most popular naming of it. But I've seen different namings for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah. So what about you, Raza? What's your situation in school? And then I think Humza mentioned you have a Muslim club. So could you speak to the activities of the club?
Yeah, so we have we have an MSA. It stands for something different. It's Muslim Student Alliance, but I think it just serves the same purpose to offer a space where Muslim students can come to practice, also learn, and just discuss about Islam. And so we are planning on actually doing a Ramadan event at our school coming up, and then also something for Eid too. So
great. What's the Ramadan event going to look like?
I think it's just going to be information. It's going to be like more of a presentation and discussion to answer any questions. Kind of, I guess, similar to what we're doing right now.
Awesome.
I think we'll use some of the ING resources to present as well. So
that's great. Soha, what was the situation like in high school, college, and did you have a club that was at your school?
So me and Omar went to very, very different high schools. Like the demographic is just completely different. So I'm surprised by his answer because I went to a very diverse school compared to his. But like maybe it was just so big that I didn't know anybody that was fasting. Like there were people I knew in passing, like my family friends since I was a kid and stuff, and things like that. But in terms of the circles that I was in, like I was the only Muslim girl on the tennis team. Yeah, I can't even place anybody that was fasting like that I can remember by name. And my school also didn't really have an established MSA at that point either. My high school, I know they had one in the past, but at that point, like they weren't an active club. So it was very much like me trying to find my own way in a lot of like senses of that.
Yeah.
But I think I still had a pretty good time because all of my friends at that point like really understood what I was doing. And I don't know if it was because I was telling them or they just like figured it out kind of. But it was really great. I remember like one day sophomore year, my friends and I were like we were working on this like nonprofit project for a class. It wasn't for a class, but we were working on this nonprofit project that was related to a class that we were in. And I went to my friend's house and I was like, oh no, like I have to break my fast. So I broke my fast with her and we had boba together. So I was very lucky that I was surrounded by a community that like fully understood what I was doing. I had a friend like give me chocolate milk every day and he was like, oh, drink it when you break your fast. And it was just sweet. Like I have very fond memories of fasting while being in high school.
Yeah.
And in terms of now, UC Berkeley has a very big Muslim community. Like there's a strong established MSA. I haven't been on campus yet, so I haven't like gotten to meet everybody and like go to the mosque with them. But I'm very excited for next year, inshallah, where I can be on campus and like go to the iftar events and sort of have the Muslim community around me while I fast, which hasn't happened before yet.
Yeah. And Humza, do you want to add anything?
No, just Raza explained our MSA pretty well, but it's it's open to everyone. We've been working on collaborations with the Judaism Club and just bringing in as many people with outside perspectives as possible. That's also one of our goals.
So we have a few minutes left, but we do have 2 questions and I want to get to them. And so if you can just be real brief in your answer for this one. Would you say you prefer to pray in private, or is it generally okay to share the space with other Muslim students? We'll start with you, Raza.
I would say, yeah, definitely. I would prefer to pray in private, like in a mosque. But I would feel comfortable praying at school with other Muslim students, I would definitely feel comfortable.
Okay, so generally, like, you know, prayer individually versus prayer with other students, would you all say that generally prayer with other students you would enjoy more? So what do you think?
Personally, I have always had private spaces when I've been in school, but I do have a friend that, like, at his own high school, he'd started like a group prayer every Friday
Yeah.
with Muslim students. So I think either is fine. Yeah, I wouldn't mind either in school. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah. Humza, what do you think?
Yeah, same with Soha. I wouldn't mind at all if it was a group prayer. I think the person she was talking about, that's a great thing that he organized, and I would definitely participate in something like that.
Yeah. And Omar? Okay.
I mean, I definitely agree. I think the difficulty is just coordinating. Like,
Yeah.
usually we pray alone because we have to coordinate our own schedules and stuff. But if you can coordinate a group prayer, go for it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. And then the last question before we wrap up for this is just one of our attendees is a teacher. They teach a novel which focuses on Islam, and they hesitate to call on their Muslim students to share, especially in case of if they're sensitive. They've tried to educate themselves as best as they can, and they're wondering how it's best for them to approach their Muslim student. So, you know, when you're learning about Muslims or Islam, how do you feel about the teacher, you know, approaching you to, you know, get a sense of to call on you in class, basically, or to share your experiences? Omar? Go, Raza, sorry. No, Raza, go for it.
Yeah, I feel like before sort of calling them out in class, I would definitely talk to them separately just to make sure that they are okay with, you know, talking a little bit about their experience with Islam, maybe even using our ING resources to teach about Islam. And yeah, I'd say definitely approach them before, but I think that's really great if you're able to get a discussion like that going.
Yeah, I want to just echo Raza. You know, I think to that question, I think it's really awesome that first of all, you as a teacher are educating yourself more when, you know, looking at these topics. I would say check in with the student kind of outside and just kind of get a sense of where they are with their own identity. There's going to be, I mean, if you called on these 4 students here, I'm sure they would jump at the opportunity of talking about Muslims or Islam, but there's other students who may not have that confidence yet. And so we are working with programs like this to build up that confidence. But at the end of the day, some students may not be willing to kind of put themselves out there in that way. So it really depends on the student. I would just check in with them privately. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I'm going to share my screen with just some resources. We're going to post in the chat a link to our page of webinars where you'll find the recording of this webinar as well as others for the series that we have going on, as well as handouts, both for Muslim parents and educators, which really identify tons of resources for these groups as they kind of learn. And these are a few for parents, and you can see their presentations on Muslims and Ramadan. They are teaching about religion in schools, guides for parents, calendars of dates and things like that, as well as teachers. The calendar of Muslim dates is really important and really, I think, helps a lot, where you can see all major dates for the next 5 years for Muslim students. And so that helps in planning, making sure not to plan, you know, major things on some of these dates. And, you know, one major resource I want to highlight is just the Educator Toolkit that really looks to, is just a comprehensive guide on all resources available to teachers that, you know, you can request. This is part of a series of, you know, other webinars. Tomorrow, as I mentioned earlier, is our webinar on supporting Muslim essential workers during Ramadan. And it's tomorrow from 12 to 1. And then we have one on Thursday specifically for educators, featuring other educators to talk a little bit more about accommodating Muslim students during this time. So I am going to go ahead and end our call. Thank you all so much to everyone who has attended. Thank you to our panelists for sharing all of your insights. We really appreciate everyone kind of coming together, and we appreciate the audience for, you know, really focusing a lot on how to address these topics. So thanks again. Salam alaikum, peace be upon you to all, and have a good rest of your evening.